Hey, what's happening, everybody? Good evening. It's me. I'm back. It's Robert Phoenix, and the digital is getting weird. Very strange signal processing. What's happening? Looks like 1996 on the channel. I don't know. I have to go to another. Let me see if I can do this somewhere else. Let's see what this is like. Let's see what we have. Right. Okay. It says I'm live now. Let me check it out. Just want to see what's happening with the digitization. Man, I kind of look fuzzy too. Hold on. Let's see what we have. Right. Okay. It says I'm live now. Let me check it out. Just want to see what's happening with the digitization. Yeah, this is better. This is better. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking a little more clear with the camera. All right. I think we got it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sunday Night Astro Live. I'm Robert Phoenix. I am your celestial Sherpa for the next hour and a half or so. And thanks for hanging in there and being a little patient as I work through a few technical difficulties tonight to try to get our Sunday night thing up and running. How is everybody? How are you? Are you navigating through the constellations of your life? How are you doing with that? It's kind of an interesting time, isn't it? And it's only going to get more interesting. More interesting. We are headed towards the trajectory of transformational velocity. This is what's going on, and there is no turning back. We are about to step right through the black mirror into the brave new world, into 1984, into childhood's end. They're all coming together. And there are other stories, the stories about humanity that have yet to be told, the ones that Hollywood maybe hasn't produced or made into mainstream fodder. It's all part of it. And you're all here for the most exciting, nerve-wracking, nail-biting, powerful, transformational time in the history of this planet. You can bet your ass on that. And you're here for it. You got a front row seat. And tonight we're going to look at some of the things that make it a little interesting, at the very least, to try to understand and see what's going on here. So one of the things that I'm going to be going over tonight is what I would call a ninth house strategy for getting through these times. And I was thinking about that over the weekend. And, sometimes things start with another person. Sometimes they start with an event. Sometimes they start with myself. This one started with me. And I was just trying to understand what I do or how I get through this time that we're in for me. And the ninth house is the highest house in the chart, and it's connected to belief systems and philosophy and law and religion and universities and travel and foreign cultures and higher mind. It's a very interesting house. And in January, the South Node will move out of Sagittarius because the ninth house is having a pretty rough go of it right now. We're all down in that third house right now. We're dealing with Gemini. We're figuring out how to adapt, and we're figuring out how to pivot, and we're figuring out how to be tricksters and use our Gemini-like mutability in order to get through the world. It's going to change. It's going to change in January. And our relationship with the ninth house in Sagittarius will change along with it. So it's been a challenging time to keep our spirits up and to have something, have a cosmology or a guiding truth to get us through these times. Oh, who's here? You got a little Jasper here? Jasper number? I swear to God, I just saw a cat that wasn't there. That was really weird. That was really weird. That was like a ghost cat. I just saw a ghost cat. I swear to God. I just saw a cat go right by me, and it wasn't my cat. Anyway, so we need this higher direction in our lives. It's really important. And the higher direction has been taking a beating because of the South Node in Sagittarius. But if you have picked up on Gemini and Hermes and Mercury as a teacher, and if you want to know more about Hermes, go to my website, 15minutesofflame.com. And I did a show on Friday with Steve and Chris Crimmy. And it's interesting because Steve is a Gemini and Chris is a Sagittarius. So they're part of the conversation. And Steve gets into a lot of these aspects of Hermes that are very interesting from a mythological standpoint. Hermes, a relationship with Apollo and Aphrodite and a number of the other gods, some really interesting conversation there. So we have been apprenticing with Hermes and Mercury and Gemini for almost the last 19 months, 18. I think it's about 15 months right now. Almost a year and a half. We're almost at a year and a half now with this. So we've been apprenticing with Mercury and Gemini and Hermes, and hopefully you've been learning some of the lessons that this time with the true note has been granting us, which means that you're finding out about duality and you're finding out about the other side of the story. And there's always another side of the story. There's always another side of the so-called truth or information that we're being given. That's going to end eventually, right? We'll be apprenticing with Venus and the true node in Taurus starting in January. I did a really fun and very lively and deep conversation with Nish in her group on Friday. I don't know if that's a public recording or not. I hope it is, because it was really good. We got into a lot of stuff. And Nish is such a great hostess. She's deep, she's profound, just is a great ear. You know, she's got like this like a giant satellite dish with a heart and more. Anyway, so if you can find that, I hope you can listen to it, because it was a really good conversation. We talk a lot about the Gemini stuff, but tonight we're going to talk about the ninth house. And we're going to talk about what the ninth house is and how to cope with this world that we're in, with this dimension that we're in. And based on what rules your ninth house, there are some clues with how you can get through this time. And especially when the node shift and Sagittarius becomes much more prominent in the sky. Got a lot to cover as well. We're going to look at the new governor, the new papess of New York, Kathy Hochul, and we're going to look at her chart. We're going to try to break that thing down. That's going to be interesting. And I was going to get into L. Ron Hubbard and David Miscavige last week, and I put that off to the side. So we're going to get into that this week. It's really interesting. Like the connections between L. Ron Hubbard and David Miscavige are freaky. Really, and L. Ron Hubbard has a freaky chart. You can see him in his chart. Like when you have somebody who is that enigmatic and that weird and eccentric and cruel. And Ron Hubbard was a cruel dude. He was a cruel guy. And then Miscavige, who doesn't seem to lose any steps in that department. And his relationship astrologically with Hubbard is very interesting, which we'll see that tonight. And we're also going to look at Mars. Mars is in 3 days. Mars will go behind the sun. It will not be visible in the night sky, not until November, late November. And then even then, when it comes back in late November, we're not really going to see it in full until like the spring of 2022. And I think that that's significant because we've seen Mars has been in the sky visible since it was Mars in Aries, and we got to go back to 2021. And Mars has gone through all the personal signs. Now it's in Libra, and now it's getting ready to move through the transpersonal signs and the signs of the outer planets. I think it's quite significant, and I'll get into that. Mars will also be transiting through the U.S. 12th house. We'll get into that too. So welcome to tonight's show. This is Sunday Night Astro Live. I'm Robert Phoenix, and let's see who else is here. Let's see who else is hanging. All right, we got 94 people. Cool. Susie Gemini. Look, right out of the gate, I'm talking about Gemini. Susie Gemini is on first base. There's Joan, the lovely Joan S. JJ, Reine de Blanc. What's going on, JJ? Liz Luscious, T. Jordan, Ryan, you guys going to be here soon. I'm going to send an email out tonight to the group. Who else we have? Gigi Abby Lynn. Hi, Cheryl. Good to see you. EC2189. Kaku. Oh, yeah. I'm going to look at the shipping shortages too. We're going to get into that with Mercury retrograde. Ian Barber in the house. What is going on, Ian? Premier of New South Wales. Done and dusted. They aren't out of lockdown yet. John Levi's coffee is the bomb, man. It is really good. I've been drinking this very affordable espresso in a can, right? It's is it like Columbia Supremo or something like that? It's not bad. It's affordable, but I'm telling you, when you taste really good beans, it's like, wow. It's like, it's night and day. Really good coffee. Bodhi Abides. What's going on? Bodhi Abides. Good to see you. Renee is here. Rob Chopra. Like the new name for the chat. Just got back from a holistic health convention. Oh, well, good. I hope you got a lot out of that, Rob. Let's see. Who else? Yeah, John is great. Let's see. Who else do we have here? WC Way. What's going on, Robin? Good to see Double V in the house. Yeah, decided to get a little Paisley tonight. Let's see. Israel, just keep vaccinating and shifting the race to legitimize their policies and making it. It's one of those things. It's the whole Israel thing is a trip because somehow what they're doing is exactly what you're saying. Like supposedly it's legitimizing everything. Well, Israel's doing it. Look what Israel's doing. Oh yeah. Israel is vaccinating like crazy, and they've got anal boosters, and they've got just not just vaccine passports, but They're putting chips in people's teeth. Israel's really doing it right. I mean, that's what they're trying to sell. And the right, the conservative right, they fucking love Israel. They love Israel. They bow down to Israel. The not so conservative left, they will cross that line, and they'll give the Palestinians lip service love, but they won't give them enough love to vote down the Iron Dome $1 billion giveaway. No, they won't do that, will they? But they like to give the Palestinians. They love them just the same. It's a common lover that they share. It's a menage a trois between Israel, the left, and the right. Let's see who else we have here. My man Thor, Steve, is here. What's going on, Steve? Looking forward to seeing you. Nancy Harding, she's in the house. There she is, Mojo Mama. Saturn and Uranus are wreaking some havoc on me. Well, wreak back. Wreak back. Show those motherfuckers who you are. Let's see. Who else do we have? Kelly B. What's going on, Kelly B? Good to see you in here. Lisa Koloshinsky. Lisa, I thought you were coming to my event. I thought you and Pat were coming to my event. I haven't seen your registration yet. It's okay if you don't come, but I thought you were coming. It'd be great to meet you both. Let's see, Paulette Hansen. Yeah, Jay's been on a roll with Reality Check. He's got great guests. Jay is kicking ass on Reality Check. The Even Guy was, I think, one of the best things for Jay. Let's see, who else do we have? Lana, what's going on, Lana? Good to see you. Oswald Spangler is here. The ghost cat was weird. Yeah. Ghost cat still beats the ghost that splashes your bottom on the toilet. That's funny. That is really, really funny. Shannon Lemaire. Hello, Shannon. Good to see you. Let's see. Who else? Morning Light. Hello, Morning Light. CC Jones. What's going on? Francesca. Nice to see you. I am Mars and Taurus 11, which is my birthday number. Cool. Benito, what's going on, brother? Meowgical Caticorn. I thought you were coming to my event too. I'd love to see you. We still have some room. Marianne Smith, you just be present. That's all we can ask for. Glock Peace pulled back that message. Hey, Chris and Steve. There they are. What's going on, Chris and Steve? Whimsical Farm Girl. Hello. Carissa Broadwater. Hi, Carissa. We were just going to come down anyway and have dinner with you, Robert. Okay. Well, that's up to you. That's up to you. Let's see. Who else? Bree Playlist is playlist. May as well be playlist these days. Let's see. Did I miss anybody? I think everybody's Michelle on Wheels. I love that. Michelle on Wheels. That's a good name. There he is, my man, DJ MC, Michael Sister Nino, Jennifer Rubin. Hi, JR. Betsy Hakey Russell. Om. They're changing the goalpost and saying America is real too. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I have this bizarre theory that I cannot absolutely, that basketball player supposedly caved and got the juice. Which one? Is it Andrew Wiggins? I bet it was Andrew Wiggins. I bet Andrew Wiggins was probably the one who was the most pliable. Was it Andrew Wiggins? Yeah, he was not at the Warriors practice the other day, and he wasn't feeling well. I bet he got jabbed. Yeah. New moon coming up soon. Yep. Vigilante. There she is. What's going on, Ani? Good to see you. The best chat on the interwebs. It's a really good one. There's people that have some good chats. Steve Kerr announced it was Wiggins. Fucking Wiggins. I knew it was Wiggins. You know why? Because Wiggins is... He's a Pisces. I'm sorry. He's a Pisces, and he succumbed to the pressure. And now he'll get all the praise and all the love from all the douchebag sports writers. He came to his senses. Let that be a lesson to Kyrie Irving and Bradley Beal and Jonathan Isaac. Yeah. You knew it was going to be Wiggins. He's just, the guy is just so shy. He's so shy. Yeah, he didn't show up for practice because he was under the weather. Yeah, he got the fucking carjack. Yeah, he is the Pisces. Yeah, that would be evening. That'd be interesting, right, Lisa? If they still got the effects. What's going on, Frank? Miranda Couch is here. PB just saw a video from the band Ghost entitled Harvest Moon. It had a lot of pedophile undertones. Wow, that's interesting. Very interesting. I can't fathom this going on much longer. It feels like the spell should break soon. Hopefully not just optimism. Yeah, Kyrie and Jonathan wouldn't do it. Wiggins is just, he's just the shy one. Yeah, he's just a shy guy. He's going to get sick now. Pisces can consume chemicals and still keep ticking. I don't know. You know, we're going to look at L. Ron Hubbard and Pisces tonight. And they take in a lot of substances, not just chemical or alcohol. Come on over. Come on, let's go. Your audience is waiting you. Come on, let's go. Come on. Come on. There you are. It wouldn't be Sunday night without the astrological cat, would it? There he is. Jasper, the astrological cat. Jasper. Yeah, here we go. You want your? I got you set up right over here. When you're ready, you can just like sit over there. That's what you can do. Okay, you got to be tough to not succumb to the pressure. You have to be tough. You have to be tough. You have to be able to. You got to be able to stand out. A lot of people don't want to stand out. I mean, the guy could barely fucking do a press conference, let alone be the poster boy for being part of the carjack resistance. Greg from the power plant control room check. What's going on, Greg? Holding down that night shift. Make sure the lights stay on, Greg. I think they could just easily pay someone off. Why don't you ask LeBron James about that? I'm sure he knows a lot about that. I'm sure LeBron is Pisces moon here. I'm down with the bloat comment. Oh, let's see. Friend who got the sticker had a heart attack today. Yow. Oh, of course there's, let's not rush to conclusions now. Let's not rush to conclusions. A lot of times, these things are happenstance. Remember that. They're happenstance. Somebody said to me on Twitter, what was it? It was something. It was bizarre. It was like something like, information doesn't mean causation or some shit like that. It was like, what are you talking about? It was the most cognitively dissonant phrase I'd heard. Let's see. Milligram experiment. Yes. Let's see. My Mars, Venus are in Pisces, so I can relate to the Pisces, but my Taurus moon grounds it. I tell you, Pisces, hardest sign in the zodiac. It is the hardest sign in the zodiac, bar none. Yep. A lot of Pisces in the audience tonight. Man, there's always a lot of, why is that? A lot of Pisces. Are you Pisces? I don't think you're a Pisces. You're a Taurus. You're a Taurus. You're just a big old Taurus cat. That's what you are. All right. Why don't we, correlation does not mean causation. Thank you, EC29, 2180. Thank you, Greg. Yeah, correlation does not mean causation. That is some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard. That's just some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard. That, I mean, maybe it's true sometimes, but that is like right out of gaslighting 101. You know, gaslighting 101. So are we going to have to keep hearing these stories? We're not hearing them enough in the right places, apparently. Jasper, yeah, you like this shirt. Virgos are our shadows. Yeah. Man, sometimes I'm a little too Virgo. Virgo with Scorpio rising is not always the easiest to live with. All right, let's get into a little invocation here. Let's get on with the show. We got a few people here. You ready, Jasper? You ready to bring your cat power? You ready to bring your Lyran cat power in here? All right, here we go. All right, I'm trying to get into the moment here. Dear blessed and holy Mother, Father God, the great central sun within the universal light, which is the light of Yeshua, Sananda, Emmanuel, and all the great prophets who have walked amongst us. We ask that only the highest and best wisdom, intelligence, and truth come through this channel at this time. That means for everybody that's watching and participating. It is so doing, we affirm and decree endurance and clarity and humor and elasticity and character and commitment and above all, love. We ask that any karmic residue be cleansed, purified, clarified, and removed from the stream at this time. You know, when I heard that Wiggins was out and he was under the weather, I'm like, oh, that motherfucker got the vax. He got the vax. He's an interesting study. He's the son of former NBA player Mitchell Wiggins. And he grew up, obviously, with some degree of privilege. I mean, his father was an NBA player. He made a good salary. And Andrew Wiggins, very talented, very gifted player. He was born in Canada. He's Canadian by birth. And he was a very high draft pick. I think he might have been maybe the first or second pick in the draft when he came out of college. And LeBron did not want him. That's a really interesting moment. Like, here the kid is, I think he's a first or second round pick, and LeBron doesn't want him. It's like, no, I don't want him. Why did LeBron not want him? Well, I think there's two reasons. Number one, he wanted a veteran player so that the Cavaliers could compete immediately. And I don't think LeBron wanted a really high draft pick, possibly upstaging him. He didn't know what Andrew Wiggins' game was like. I mean, Andrew Wiggins could have come out and been the next Dr. J. And you think LeBron would want that? No. So they immediately traded him, and they traded him to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Kevin Love. And Andrew Wiggins has always been a really passive player. I mean, he plays like a Pisces. He's passive. And he would get a lot of criticism for not being more dominant and not being more of a a take charge guy. And the Warriors were lucky because they traded another Pisces. They're born on the same day. It's one of those really weird trades where where players who were born on the same day, I think off by what, 1 or 2 years, 1 year, I think, but born on the same day, got traded for each other. It was very strange. It was like this Piscean sort of river from California to Minnesota, and you had these two ships passing each other as a result of that. And when he got to California, to the Warriors, I think a lot of the expectations for him were muffled. Let's just say they were muffled. It was a good place for him to be a Pisces, by the bay, by the ocean. He has another Pisces. He has 2 other Pisces on the team, Steph Curry and Draymond Green. And they're big. Well, Dre's a big personality. He's a big. Steph is a big weirdo. He's a weirdo. I used to like Steph Curry, but as he's continued to go through the league, he's gotten progressively more strange. The latest being that his mother, never, I feel like now we're getting to like, you know, the grandmothers of the NBA gossip. His mother, Sonia Curry, just recently filed for divorce from Steph's dad, Del Curry, who, guess what, played in the NBA just like Andrew Wiggins' dad. In fact, the Warriors have 4 players on their team whose fathers all played in the NBA presently. And his father, Del, was a great shooter. That's what he was known for. And Steph got his ability in a lot of ways for shooting basketball from his father. And his mother was a volleyball player. So apparently she's been living with some dude for the last year or so, maybe more. Some guy who used to play tight end for the New England Patriots. And then when Steph Curry heard about it, like, he sided with his mother. I mean, dude, you're a fucking adult. Sorry, you're an adult. You got kids. He's siding with his mother. It says it all. Why do you even have to say anything? Like, why do you even have to bring it out in public? Maybe it's just because he's got his wires crossed in his MK Ultra programming. All right, enough NBA, enough railing on the Pisces, on the Pisces players. It's funny now. I will say this: I think Draymond Green gave his press conference after Andrew Wiggins got a shot. I bet that's what happened. I bet that's what happened. Now that I think about it, he didn't do it before the shot. He didn't come out and say, "Hey, you know, we got to support him, and he can do anything you want." Yeah, I think it was afterwards. I think Dre knew that. It was like, now he doesn't have to deal with the consequences and the backlash. All right, let's just take a look at where everything is astrologically, because I'm sure there's some people. We've been talking about astrology a little bit, actually a lot. Okay. And I am like possessed by that song Gemini Spacecraft. I've just been listening to it all weekend. I shot my space gun, baby. I thought about you. So David Bowie actually did that song for the legendary Stardust Cowboy because he wanted him to make some royalties. He covered that because that guy would get paid. That was pretty cool of him, right? I thought so. He probably liked the tune anyway. All right. I need to do one thing and then we're off and running. Okay, let's do this. Okay. All right, we're good. Let's get to it. Come on. Be bigger. There we go. Oh, Uranus on the ascendant. You know, I can feel it. I could definitely feel it. There we go. That is where it's at right now. The ascendant is in Taurus, and Uranus is right there. We started the show, I guess, right with Uranus on the ascendant. I think it's good. It's good. I mean, you want to do a show about astrology? Let's have Uranus on the ascendant, and let's have a 0-degree Aquarius midheaven. I would say it's fairly auspicious. Saturn, 6 degrees retrograde. That's going to change next week. I believe Saturn goes direct next week. So that'll be the first of the giants that will go direct. We have Pluto retrograde, Jupiter retrograde, Neptune retrograde. There's our friend Mercury retrograde. We have a lot of Mercury retrograde to talk about tonight in a number of different ways. And then Sun-Mars conjunction. That's spicy. So tomorrow when you get up and you do your day, whatever your day is, if you go somewhere or you go home and you throw your computer on and you're looking at your online work or whatever, we're going to have a Sun-Mars conjunction on Monday. I kind of like it. It's fiery, a little intense, but it's in Libra, so it's going to be Libra intense. A lot of social justice in the air, and a lot of wanting to balance the scales. Tomorrow could be a really, really interesting. I mean, not just tomorrow. So we got Wednesday, and then tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, and even Thursday. That 3-day period with the Sun-Mars conjunction, and then Mars, in those really close degrees, really up until the weekend. It's going to be interesting energy. Again, people are they're fucking sick and tired of shit. Most people are. There are the media and other how do I say this? Other smaller little minions, little minions or creeps of the media. I think the minions and the creeps are tired too. They're sick and tired, but but for different reasons. They look at people who are obstinate and are pro-choice, and they just get over yourself. Just get over yourself. Come on, get the car jack so we can just get on with our lives. Sometimes they'll couch it in some sort of faux concern, but usually it's really just all about we're tired of living through this, and you're the ones that are holding it up. It's you're the ones, and that's what's going to happen. It's like the more that people hold out and don't get the carjackers are going to get more and more hostile because they're looking at it like, we could be back to normal by now. We could be back to normal if it wasn't for you. And this Sun-Mars conjunction, the one thing about astrology is it's pretty agnostic. But I would say this Sun-Mars conjunction really leans into that second decan. So it's Aquarian at 12, 13, 14. That's Aquarian. That's the Aquarian decan. So that's really a lot more public, a lot more vocal, a lot more, I'm wondering if tomorrow we're going to see some interesting stuff. Tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday. I wonder if we're going to see some interesting like shutdowns, blockades, things of that nature. People walking out into freeways, shutting down traffic. I wonder if we're going to see some of that over the next few days. That's quite possible. That's very possible. They're still enshrined with Saturn, which means that people are taking their, even though it's in sunny Libra, sunny complementary Libra, I think people are taking themselves a little more seriously over the past few days. That's my sense. But not so seriously that they're going to lose the plot, because Libra can be a little over agitated in its quest, especially Mars and Libra, in its quest to balance the scale, so to make sure that things get heard. But because it's trining Saturn and moving towards Jupiter, even moving towards Jupiter, there's this really interesting, I think, progression in energy, at least starting right now. By the time, 11 days out, even 9 days out, when the sun hits around 20 Libra, right before we go into Scorpio season, it's going to be trining Jupiter. And that'll be a much more expansive time. A lot more expansive. We got Mercury trining Jupiter right now, which is good for communication and really Mercury retrograde in Libra trying Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. If you ever wanted to make peace with somebody, this is a good time to do it. Like the next few days, I think the channels and the gates are wide open. You want to apologize. You want you want to, extend an olive branch to somebody. You could do that with this nice trine. I like it, and especially because we have the Sun and Mars beginning to encroach into that Aquarian decan. Mercury now is in the Gemini decan, but it's retrograding, and I think it goes back to 18 or 19, so it goes right back into that Aquarian decan. So we have a lot of Aquarian energy, Libra energy, which is good. I think it's really good. We're going to get into some of the weird retrograde stuff. There's this thing called the Pandora Papers that just came out. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as we get into some of the shipping issues around Mercury retrograde and some of the outer planets. But there's some interesting things happening. And I'm not necessarily saying that what's happening is going to lead to the next shoe dropping or some kind of denouement when it comes to justice and liberté. I'll get into it. I think this the Pandora Papers and what's coming out, I think they're being planned. I think this is a planned release of information that is both timed and crafted to do a specific thing, which I'll get into. But that's part of the Mercury retrograde energy. We have Venus squaring Neptune. It's moving on. It's separating. So the last few days with Venus-Neptune squares, I think it can be tricky. Venus-Neptune squares are tricky in a relationship. I'm sorry, Venus. No, that's a Venus trine Neptune. My bad. Venus square Jupiter. Oh, that's not so bad, is it? The Venus-Jupiter squares are, any square to Jupiter, I think, is interesting. It kind of opens things up a little bit. And you may be overzealous, or you may be taking a risk, but it's okay. It's all right. You may not necessarily see the potential. So, if you started a relationship, does anybody start relationships now post-COVID? I think that's a really interesting comment, or at least a question. Has anybody started relationships post-COVID? I think it'd be a tricky thing. Very tricky thing. Number one, there's a lot of factors now that come into play, which we know about. But it's more than just those factors. People have been isolated and alone for a significant period of time. And some of those patterns just set in. So breaking through those patterns and breaking out and connecting with another person isn't always easy. It's funny because when you look around the world and you see what's been happening in these various cities like London and Milan and Turin and certainly Paris, those are very Aquarian kinds of relationships. It's not like people like, hey, we're not locked down anymore, let's hook up. It's not really like that. It's more like, hey, we're in this weird place, and we're gonna have to figure this thing out. So why don't we hit the streets and hook up with a bunch of other people? That's the Aquarian energy. So to me, this Venus square Jupiter could be a number of things. Number one, it might be difficult for some people to have a real bead on the bigger picture. I think if you're feeling demoralized, I think a Venus Jupiter square could be hard. It could be difficult, especially in Scorpio, which is so internalized and deep and intense and shadowy. And squaring Jupiter could just bring more of that up in some ways. That part I think could be hard. But there also is, I think, an element of risk here that's kind of interesting with that square. Jupiter is kind of moving on from the square to Uranus. That's an 8-degree orb. Actually, it's moving back closer because it's retrograde, so it's getting closer, but it's still an 8-degree orb. Jupiter-Uranus squares, I think, really represent where we are. I feel like that square really represents where it's like, people want to break out, bust out. It's enough, right? Enough. There's, this fixed sign energy. Both planets are retrograde, and I don't think anybody has a lot of delusions about things going back to the way they were, except for the people that are forcing other people to do things that they think will allow them to get back to where they were. I think the people that understand things, really understand things, know that this is never, ever, ever, ever going back, and we're never going to be the same again. And it's hard. It's not easy. It's really not easy. But this Jupiter Uranus square with these at retrograde, it's that energy. It's like let's try to break through something here. Let's break through something. And all these outer planets are retrograde. And when I was talking on Nish's show, we were talking about how these outer planets allow us in a lot of ways to look at things institutionally and kind of step back and kind of, review them and kind of reorganize our relationship with them. And that's going on in every single one of these aspects. Pluto in Capricorn, of course, we get into governmental tyranny, medical tyranny, corporate fascism. Pluto being very much connected to assets and resources. We're clearly we've been looking at that for a while now, but the retrograde at this point is quite interesting in the light that we have all these other planets that are retrograde. Saturn retrograde, kind of similar, Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, it's getting ready to stop. Like I said, next week, it goes forward again. And it goes back to that time in June when it went retrograde. So whatever was going on with you in June, where if you might have had something that you had to put on the back burner, or you were delayed, or something came up during that time in June. I'll even get specific here for you. We'll get a specific read. We want to be specific as much as we can be. Okay. All right. So Saturn went retrograde in May at 13 degrees. It won't reach 13 degrees again until the next year. So that period of May, and that period of May that I'm referring to specifically is, where are we? (23rd of May). So just as we're going into Gemini, Saturn goes retrograde. Now, if we go back further and we look at when Saturn was at 6 degrees, that was in January. So roughly from January 15th to January 20th, that January 19th, a 4-day period. That's where Saturn is retrograding back to. It'd be interesting to see kind of where you were in that period of time in January, second week of January. And that's coming, what's interesting about that is that's coming out of the January 6th debacle at the White House. So now we have the number 6 showing up prominently 3 times. January 6th, 6 degrees, Saturn in Aquarius, and 6 degrees Saturn Aquarius retrograde. Just a coincidence, perhaps. Just a slight coincidence. Anyway, if you have any recollection about what was going on with you back in January during that time, I know where I was going through. I was depressed. I was fucking depressed. I was coming out of the election, whatever that thing was. I was depressed. And I wasn't depressed because the election didn't go the way that I thought it would, because ultimately I believe it did. I was depressed because of what happened. That part depressed me. Like the actual process itself depressed me. That took me a while to get over. I remember going through that period, probably up until through February. I was really from November, well, it was November 6th, right? We have another 6 number in there. November 6th, January 6th, Saturn, 6 degrees, Aquarius, going direct at 6 degrees Aquarius, a lot of 6s. And we move into 2022, which is a 6-year. Yeah, it took me a few months to get through that. That was a tricky period. Really, really tricky period. But I don't know what happened to turn the corner. It just might have been the sun moving into Aquarius and going into my third house and, kind of bolstering things a little bit with some of my Libra planets. But that was a tough time. And, I don't know where you were the week after that. So we're talking 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. That's where Saturn was at 6 Aquarius. And so it's stopping there. And it's going to be moving forward. So let's get a date on that so you guys know where that's at. Yeah, that's 8 days from now. So the 11th, 10/11. Yeah, 10/11, Saturn goes direct. In the meantime, it is the retrograde parade. And that is what we've got going on here. Let's go back into the chart of the moment. Let's take a look at some of these things. The other thing is over the course of the next few days, we have this Sun Mars in conjunct with Uranus. That'll be interesting. It's like, how's that going to work out on a kind of a social or collective level? The conjuncts are tricky to understand and try to wrap your head around them. You can see here with the Mercury retrograde in conjunct with Neptune. To me, that's like Andrew Wiggins. That's Andrew Wiggins. You got Neptune and Pisces retrograde. Mercury, he gave a press conference, basically said it's none of your business. And Mercury retrograde, now it's everybody's business in conjunct Neptune. And it's going to get closer over the course of the next couple of days. I think it's one of those aspects. Hey, stop that. He's got this new thing now. Hey, stop that. He's clawing at my couch. I think the next few days, in terms of like recrimination and guilt, and I also feel like with this Mercury retrograde in conjunct Neptune, I feel like there's this free-floating anxiety in the air with this in conjunct, which is going to be interesting because the Sun-Mars conjunction is very, very different energy. Sun-Mars is like, let's get to it. There may not be a target. And when I say target, you have to be careful how you parse words here on YouTube. When I refer to a target, I'm talking about like an object or goal or an intention, right? To move your energy. I think that people are looking to put their energy somewhere with this Sun-Mars conjunction. Doing it with other people, especially people that you can connect with one-on-one, is good. But the in conjunct with Uranus is like, okay, well, we have this sense of justice. We have this sense of standing up for liberté, human rights, the second decan of Libra. But where does it go? The in conjunct with Uranus is like, where does it go? And it's not like it's squaring Uranus and it's like, okay, here's the square, it's hard square. So the energy is going to go in this direction and there's going to be a clash. That I think would clearly be indicative of that. But that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. A trine would be, again, easy. Like it'd be easy. It's like, okay, well, we have these goals. These goals represent our ability to modify and radically shift our relationship with things like our resources and our environment and our values, because Taurus is about values. And you get a Sun-Mars conjunction in a trine. It's like, okay, let's go, let's do it. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of perhaps even social energy around something like that. Oppositions are a bit more tricky, but the inconjunct, if you don't know what an inconjunct is, if you're new to the show and someone new to astrology, I talk about them. And the inconjunct is a 150-degree angle. You can see that dotted green line right there. And that dotted green line means that there's not a clear path between these two planets. Now, there has to be a 3-degree or less orb, or else it doesn't qualify as an inconjunct. So it's a very tight window for an inconjunct. And the inconjunct represents two signs that theoretically have nothing to do with each other, with the exception of these two signs, because they do. They're both theoretically ruled by Venus. So they are connected in an interesting sort of way because of their rulership, but they're really not connected because of their angular relationship. You know what's really interesting around this? This is some Mercury retrograde shit. Like, there are two Mercury retrograde stories now that I think are fascinating. One is this Pandora papers, which I think I think it's a scam. I think the Pandora paper stuff is a scam. I think it's one of those things that it's like a press release. It's sort of like when they show Biden getting his injection, and the camera's back and you see him on a set. Like, that stuff gets released on purpose. That's not some insider, leaking that to the public. They're doing that on purpose. And the Pandora papers, I feel like that. I'll tell you what's not a leak is the R. Kelly stuff. Now, the R. Kelly stuff, now we're kind of getting into this Sun-Mars conjunction in Libra, the inconjunct with Uranus. And R. Kelly is a Capricorn. He's actually born he has the same birthday as David Bowie, January 8th. So he's a Capricorn. And January 8th is going to be right here with this Mercury retrograde stuff, because January 8th is going to be around almost 20 degrees Capricorn, if I'm not mistaken, 19, 20 degrees. So this Mercury retrograde is coming in and squaring R. Kelly's sun. Now, if you're not following that, R. Kelly's basically saying, look, I'm going to give you a bunch of names that are connected to pedophilia in the music industry in Hollywood. That stuff is real. That is real. He's basically coming out. He's like, fuck you. I'm going to tell you what's going on. Here, I can show you the story if you haven't seen it yet. Let me find it. Okay, I don't have a link yet to the story. But let me tell you some of the names that he's connecting to let me see if I can find it. Where's the link? Let me see. There is no link. Let me find it here. Okay, so I may pull back on this. That's a Mercury retrograde move, isn't it? But it wouldn't surprise you now, would it? If that happened. So supposedly, I'm not going to name the names. I'm going to wait. Supposedly, he's going to blow the lid on a lot of people in the hip hop business, the hip hop industry. I think that's quite possible. I think it's quite possible. That to me would be a Mercury retrograde move. One time I met somebody who was in James Brown's inner circle. It was kind of an odd meeting. I drove to LA. It's back when I was in the music business. I drove to LA to meet this woman, and she was the wife of somebody who was very influential in house music. I'm not going to name any names. but very influential in house music. And let's just say they had a unique relationship with other people. And so I go up there and I go to this hotel, and pretty nice hotel. And I go to meet her, and with the idea that she's going to introduce me to some of James Brown's people. And then like that night, I think James Brown was playing the Hollywood Bowl. I didn't stay around for the show. I had to get back, but I was going to go meet and hang out and just see what was what. And one of James Brown's people told me about R. Kelly. And he said, he was this old, I can't remember his name. He was this older dude. And he said, apparently R. Kelly snatched this guy's girlfriend. And the guy was pissed. The guy was pissed at R. Kelly. So he decided to get back at him. And this is, again, coming from James Brown's inner circle. And apparently this guy who R. Kelly snatched the girlfriend of or from started to feed him underage girls. That there were underage girls that he had like privy to and were kind of in his I don't know, power or spell, whatever, right? So he started to send these girls to R. Kelly. And essentially what happened, according to James Brown's guy, is that R. Kelly got hooked on young girls. He hooked them. And then once he hooked them, then they had him. And there was a lot of other stuff that has gone down besides that. Besides a lot of the public stuff, there's like publishing and money and just a lot of other things that's related to R. Kelly's life in the business that don't get talked about. But the guy hooked him. So finally, R. Kelly went down. Now apparently he's going to sing. I'm not gonna link to it. If it comes up, it comes up. But it's another kind of Mercury retrograde thing that's happening. Okay, I want to move into the shipping stuff because that's a big deal for a lot of people. And I think it's pretty serious. Yeah, this is the Pandora Papers. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, this is just a straight news story, and I'm going to try to connect some dots here with what's going on with Mercury retrograde and the outer planets. So an all-time high of 56 cargo ships are stuck waiting off the coast of California coast as shipping ports hit their fourth record backup in weeks. Okay, let's see what they talk about here. Key ports in Southern California have hit a fourth record in less than 3 weeks as shipping delays surged past early pandemic levels. On Monday, 56 cargo ships were stuck at anchor or in drift areas off Los Angeles and Long Beach ports. The ports are currently dealing with 140 total ship in the ports, including 87 freighters. In late August, the ports hit an all-time high not seen since February, when the onset of the pandemic and panic buying wreaked havoc on global supply chains. The queue is a result of COVID-19 related disruptions. And holiday buying surges. Paired with the national labor shortage, Port of Los Angeles data indicates that ships' average wait times have increased to 8.5 days. The normal number of container ships at anchor is between 0 and 1. Kip Lutit, the executive director of the Marine Exchange in Southern California, told Insider in July. California ports in Los Angeles and Long Beach account for about 1/3 of U.S. imports. Are the Chinese still running the Long Beach port? I thought that they were given their walking papers. I bet they are. These ports operate as a primary source of imports from China and have experienced heavy congestion throughout the pandemic. Part of the problem is the ships are double or triple the size of the ships we were seeing 10 to 15 years ago. Ludit said that they take longer to unload, more trucks, more trains, more warehouses to put the cargo. While the container ships are forced to anchor and await berth space, companies importing and exporting goods to and from Asia expect additional shipping delays and higher transportation costs. Last week, Judah Levine, the head research at Freightos, told insider shipping prices between the two regions have jumped 500% from this time last year. In response to elevated transportation costs, many companies have already implemented price hikes. On Sunday, the president of UPS, Scott Price, warned that supply chain snags will continue into the coming year. To give you a real-life challenge of the kinds of challenges we're seeing, one of our dedicated charters was recently denied entry into China because a crew member tested positive for COVID, forcing the vessel to return to Indonesia. Okay, the entire crew, before continuing, Michael Witniski, Dollar Tree CEO, said on Thursday earnings call, overall the voyage was delayed by 2 months. Okay, there was one guy, one person who tested positive for COVID, and there is probably a very good chance that they were on a high cycle, and that high cycle was a big red flag. So this is problematic. It's very problematic, and I've heard some interesting theories that the cargo ships that are coming from China, well, might actually have some human cargo on them. That's quite, that's an interesting theory. I'm not here to back it up, although it's an interesting theory. So you do the math on that, because there's a much bigger picture going on in terms of a lot of other stuff. I'll talk about that tomorrow on my show, because there are things I can't get into here if we want to keep this channel. So let's take a look at the outer planets one more time, and let's try to get a handle on the shipping issue as it relates to all this retrograde. So usually when we look at things like shipping, we look to what is this? Oh, this is the United States. That's the US chart. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, Mars, Neptune square. Let me get back over here. We'll get into that in a second. Okay. So I think that the retrograde that we want to pay attention to, again, comes right back to Mercury here, and Mercury in retrograde and square with Pluto. I think that's a pretty significant tell. Pluto, of course, we're dealing with resources, other people's money, and we're dealing with decisions, like high-level decisions that are coming down from the so-called government, whatever that is at this point. And it's also quite interesting that the current governor of California, who is in a recall election, is basically in charge of the ports of California. So Gavin Newsom is not really going to budge on this. Gavin Newsom is the harbor master right now for the state of California and the United States. And he is, number one, he's not happy. And number two, I don't think he's going to let these ships come in anytime soon. Now, you can say, well, it's a federal issue. There are companies involved, and these companies need to have their product. A lot of these companies are screwed. And a lot of these companies are targeted for demolition. And there's about 150 companies that are not targeted for demolition. And frankly, they don't care. They're the ones that aren't screwed. So I was at at Fry's a year ago, Fry's Electronics, there was nothing there. I was shocked. I mean, Fry, you used to be able to get everything at Fry's. There was nothing there. And I remember talking to the guy. I said, so what's going on here? Well, you know, we're going to start to buy from more domestic manufacturers. And we're going to be, you know, doing something different with our inventory. We're changing our inventory. So it was so weird. There were only like 3 people working at the when I went to Fry's, there'd be like 20 people just lined up, man. Lined up. There were about 3. And there was nothing in the store. That store's closed now. It's completely closed. So Fry's is a shining example of a company that is slated for demolition. Why? Because Fry's sells physical goods, physical technology. And the fourth industrial revolution theoretically has very little to do with physical technology. There'll be some physical technology, but you won't need a store that sells everything from vacuum cleaners to microwave ovens to TVs to computers to computer parts. Like that's a relic. That's a thing of the past. So a lot of what's happening is part of an ongoing demolition. And with this Mercury-Pluto square, we can kind of see that. And it's also forcing people to wake up. Like, why is this happening? You know, what is the intent, or what is the purpose around this? It doesn't necessarily make it easier, but certainly it gets people, they want to get to the bottom of it. Right? When you get into like aspects with Mercury and Pluto, you want to get to the bottom of shit. So we have this kind of obsessive need now with this Mercury-Pluto square, both of them being retrograde, to try to find out what's going on. That's an important aspect of this, and especially with the shipping stuff. I just feel like with Pluto in Capricorn, I mean, we saw it when Pluto went into Capricorn in 2009. It devastated companies. I mean, some of those companies needed to be devastated. Lehman Brothers probably needed to be devastated. They didn't need to be paid off, or that didn't need to happen. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, you know, one of these weird private public institutions. Bear Stearns probably needed to be devastated, but they didn't need to get paid back. We saw that. We saw the first wave of this devastation when Pluto went into Capricorn. Ford was devastated. It was GM. GM was devastated, and they took on a loan from the United States government to keep going. AIG took on a loan. So there were a number of companies that were brought back to life, but there was some that didn't make it. That was when we saw this first wave of financial devastation. It was almost like the black goo of the financial industry. It was just seeping into all these different places. Companies, governments, this toxic debt, getting into Greece. Greece is holding all this bad debt and basically, you know, paying a huge price for it. And still to this day, and it's like, oh, okay, Greece, well, you want to take on some refugees? Well, yeah, why don't you do that? That'll help you with your debt a little bit. Yeah, we'll keep you alive. Why don't you take a few thousand refugees? That's how the game works, by the way. So Pluto has played a role. Once Pluto went into Capricorn, it was starting to demolish our institutional systems, our systems that are related in a lot of ways to incorporation. Now, incorporation isn't always a bad thing. There are people that have their own companies and their own little LLCs, and they run their mom and pop businesses, and they may have 2 or 3 restaurants somewhere. And those are LLCs, right? They're limited liability corporations. We're talking mega corporations. And once Pluto went into Capricorn, it was a wrecking ball, and it's still there. And now we're just seeing like the latest kind of iteration of this thing. And Pluto, what's really interesting is that Pluto's in this Virgo decan, and the work thing and the health thing has really come up, because Virgo represents, you know, frontline workers, health workers, care workers, also just people that do basic Virgo jobs like clip your dog's nails or do your nails or make your latte. I mean, so yeah, it's in that decan now, and it's retro. You know, it's like it's affecting these things. It's affecting these Virgoan kinds of institutions and applications. And I think a lot of people are really trying to figure out what they're going to do with their money, what they're going to do with their resources. And this Mercury Pluto, this Mercury retrograde square Pluto, I think could have some impact on the banking industry. I'm wondering if people are going to like start to just pull their money out of banks. I think that's a possibility. I think that's a possibility. Because we tend to now sort of operate more as a group in a lot of ways. We're building this group consciousness. And things can happen very quickly now when we get the new download. Okay. The other thing is we have this inconjunct also right here. This is the other inconjunct, and it is with Mercury and it is with Neptune. And when we think of Neptune and Pisces, what do we think of? We think of the ocean. And we think of all those Piscean sorts of metaphors. And Mercury is about travel, and it's about, in Libra, it's about contracts, agreements. So again, there's this is the one aspect here as it relates to the shipping crisis that I think is interesting, because it's kind of imperceptible. I mean, they're in that story that kind of laid out, well, there's an overabundance of goods. There are bigger ships bringing these things in because they're trying to get here and make up for the shortfall. And that's just one thing. There are a few other, but that doesn't really tell the whole story. The whole story is not being told, not with the Mercury inconjunct to Neptune. And tomorrow, Mercury goes a little bit closer into that inconjunct. I think the shipping thing is going to be a big topic of conversation tomorrow. It's going to be, I would not be surprised if Tucker Carlson, maybe he already has, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tucker Carlson really jumps on this tomorrow night. I think the shipping issue is it's going to hit. Big, I think it's because it's been bubbling. People have been talking about what's going on. Why are these things not showing up? But this inconjunct, especially with the retrograde, I think it's going to be a very interesting Monday as it relates to that. All right, let's take a look at Mars, and then we're going to get into some of these individual charts. This is really interesting with Mars. So here's the sun, we got the Earth, boom, right? The solar system game. So Mars has been in the sky. We've seen Mars in the sky since last year. And it's gone through all the personal signs, starting with Mars in Aries, all the way up through Mars in Libra. So a lot of these Mars aspects have been very personal for people. Mars and Aries, their action, their energy, their intentionality. Mars and Taurus, dealing with ultimately that period of time during the election where everything just seemed to be so fucking slow. It was just, it was that Mars and Taurus. It was like walking through, like big vats of oatmeal. That's what it felt like. And then things speeding up, Mars and Gemini, but it's all personal planets. And now it's getting ready to move into the transpersonal planets and moving behind the sun. I'll show you guys here. So it says, this is from earthsky.org. Mars moves directly behind the sun on October 8th. That's 5 days from now. And therefore can't be seen. The next real opportunity to spot the red planet with unaided eye won't be until the last week of December, when it'll dimly shine low on the sunrise direction shortly before sun. So Mars making its reappearance right there, the last week of December, kind of rising with the winter solstice and the return of the sun, actually, which is what the winter solstice is. For the first half of 2022, Mars will slowly brighten, but it won't dominate its area of the sky until the spring of 2022. So this is, to me, a very interesting component, because metaphorically, It's like Mars, especially in Scorpio, is about doing things behind the scenes. Like Mars is hidden, it's out of view. And I really feel like November, um, October, but more November is kind of a perilous time. And I'm not, I try to be not a doom and gloom person, but for me, that's a perilous and very intense aspect. Like things are going on behind the scenes, especially Mars and Scorpio. There's this potential for intensity and violence with Mars and Scorpio. I mean, Mars and Scorpio to me is not a big deal. I like Mars and Scorpio. It's powerful, but we're not seeing it. Now, there could be some other very interesting elements as it relates to you and having Mars sort of be out of the sky and how we would deal with something like we'd have less Mars. I mean, theoretically, that's how it would work. You know, we would have less Mars. There would be kind of less access to Mars energy during that period of time. Now, that said, it's also occluded and occulted and very almost 12th house-like, since it's on the other side of the sun, which means that a lot can be going on and we're just not aware of it. I mean, that's the other part of this Mars transit and going behind the sun, especially in Scorpio. And I had the US chart here, and I'm going to bring that up right now because I think this is interesting and really comes into the conversation. So this is the US 12th house. I mean, you can see the 12th house clearly starts, well, it starts in Libra. I'm sorry, clearly starts in Scorpio. I just have my eye on Mars here. Clearly starts in Scorpio. And then we have roughly, what is that? That's 0 Sag. So 25 degrees there, 25 Scorpio. That's where the 12th house of the US chart starts. So when Mars is behind the sun, it will also be, metaphorically speaking, behind the sun in the US chart. I mean, it won't be completely behind the sun because that would be something like Mars in Capricorn, perhaps, or maybe a Mars conjunction. But being in the 12th house, it's not seeable. It's not visible. So it's interesting in that this Mars transit behind the sun coincides with transiting Mars going through the US 12th house. Honestly, it's how do I say this? It troubles me. That aspect troubles me because the 12th house is hidden enemies. And with Mars not being visible in the sky and it being on the other side of the sun, again, hidden from us, like these Mars aspects are going to be hidden from us, occulted from us. And we may feel less Mars-like or less Mars in our own lives. In the spring of 2022, it'll be the return of Mars. And, you know, we may come on strong when that return of Mars takes place. And that could be a real testing time between what happens now, or really on the 8th, and a little bit after that as Mars goes through Scorpio. And then the spring of 2022. To me, that's a period. That is a period because once we hit the spring of 2022, Mars returns to the visibility of the sky. We're dealing with Aries, which is Mars energy in the spring of 2022. And we'll also be dealing with Mars being moving into Aquarius. That'll be in April of March, April. I believe it moves into Aquarius in March. And then it'll be in Pisces in April. And I think it's May of 2022, we have Mars in Aries. And that's going to be right around the same time that Mars will become visible again. It's an interesting time. I feel like the next, really let's call it from November to May, that 6-month period is going to be a big test. It's going to be a big test because we're not going to be dealing directly with this idea of this luminary being visible to us in a very significant way. And yet at the same time, because of that, I feel like there would be other people or other forces or other entities that would take advantage of that. Again, sort of cosmically and intentionally. And clearly here with the Mars transit of the 12th house in the US chart, that's a biggie. They both coincide simultaneously. Let's find out when that is. Let's get a good Mars read here. So Mars goes into Scorpio in November. Actually, Mars goes into Scorpio on Halloween night. That's interesting. That's really interesting. So we have Mars and Scorpio on Halloween night, and then it hits that 25th degree in December on the 7th of December. And that's in Scorpio, and anything else happening right around that time? Yeah, I mean, the transit of Mars through Scorpio is going to do some pretty intense things, actually. So if we go into November, Mars will be at 7 Scorpio. It'll be squaring Saturn. And then it'll be in opposition with Uranus. I think the kind of the largest effect of that be right around the 18th of November. We'll have Mars and Scorpio opposing Uranus and Taurus, and scoring Saturn in Aquarius. I think that's a tricky time. And it's not, Mars isn't going to be in the US 12th house at that point, but it's headed in that direction. And I think we'll have a sense around that time what the next 6 months will look like. I think from November to May, I think it's a huge test. A huge test for us. Let's go into 2022. Let's see where Mars really emerges. Yeah. So Mars hits 0 Aries in May of 2022. So springtime. Yep. By that time, the Pluto, US Pluto return will have started. And on March 2nd, there's going to be the Venus Mars conjunction. And Venus and Mars are really closely linked all year in 2022. When you look at May, and we have Venus, basically Venus and Mars is kind of dancing with each other for most of the early part of 2020. That's interesting. I think that's fascinating. That this feminine energy and the masculine energy are kind of, hopefully in sync with one another, trying to find ways to work together. Because you can see that all the way through 2022. Venus kind of takes off a little bit faster right around May. We'll have Venus in Aries and Mars in Aries, because Venus is starting to separate at that point. Because remember, I think we had that Venus retrograde, and Venus is catching up now. So, but that's going to be an interesting story for 2022. So this period, this November to May period, it's a testing period. It's a real testing period. And hang in there. Do your best to hang in there. Even if there is no visible Mars in the sky, hang in there. We got to get through that 6-month period. It almost coincides with this idea of the dark winter. It feels that way. It kind of feels that way. And again, I don't like to be a doom and gloom person, but I also don't mind having to look at it and call it. So I feel like we're in a 6-month deep cycle, really deep cycle, that 6-month period. That coincides with the shift of the nodes into Taurus and Scorpio. I think we're going to deal with money stuff. If we can't get the goods to the ports, that means that people theoretically aren't going to get parts for what they need. And you're going to have businesses shutting down, more businesses shutting down. And that's a problem. And I feel like we could go through a pretty serious financial crunch from November through May of next year. And people are going to have to figure out how they're going to get through it and survive. That's my sense. And once Mars returns to Aries in May, the energy shifts in a very significant way. Very significant way. Just hang in there, right? If you can endure through these times, you could probably get through just about anything. Okay. Let's get into some personal charts here. Let's talk about the 9th house. This is a good segue to the 9th house in terms of strategy, personal strategy. Let me bring up this chart of the 9th house, or this chart in general, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Okay, pretty standard, pretty straightforward interpretation of the wheel. We have the ascendant, identity, image, self, the 2nd house, possessions, value, worth. 3rd house, communication, knowledge, logic. 4th house, family, parents, security, home. 5th house, pleasure, creativity, children, and fun. 6th house, health, service, and work. 7th house, marriage, relationships, unions, partnership. Ascendant, imamcelli, descendant. 8th house, death, transformation, psychology, power, sex. And we come to the 9th house, philosophy, beliefs, ethics, and travel. Travel hasn't been going that well, has it, since that South Node in Sagittarius has asserted itself. So let's talk a little bit about the 9th house. I think the 9th house is those things and more. I feel like the 9th house is an expression of our higher self. Like this is where we reach. This is where we reach to our greatest potential to connect with like the crown of the chart, the midheaven. The 9th house is as high as it gets in the chart, because once you get to the 10th house, once you cross the midheaven, you begin to descend. So this is all about ascent from the 1st house. And then this is the denouement, the zenith. And then once you cross the midheaven, you're descending. So the 9th house is about as high as you can get. And when I think of the 9th house in its purest kind of form, I think of monasteries, like Buddhist monasteries way up on top of the Himalayas, or monasteries way up in the Alps. I mean, these are places that are very high in altitude, but also theoretically high in quote unquote spiritual energy. Although some pretty dark stuff has gone on in a lot of those places, but let's just stay with the metaphor there in its most pure form. Okay. But it also represents your higher mind and how you theoretically connect with the higher mind and God. And there's a small part in the Bible where Jesus says, I must go to the upper room to be with my father. Right. I must go to the upper room to be with my father. So what is he really saying? He's saying that he theoretically, hey, you guys hang out down here. I'm going to go up there and I'm going to meditate. That's what I'm going to do. You can have your domestic life down here. I'm going to go up there and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to be at one with my father. But I also believe he's talking about the higher mind. Like the upper room is the higher mind, where the day-to-day consciousness and the triviality of our lives are down in the valley of our experience. They're there, we're up here. And when we're up here, we have the potential to experience wisdom and awakening and epiphany and opening. And not only that, but a sense of vision and faith. And in a time like this, we really need that. So how do we work with the ninth house? Because this is something that I feel like is going to be really important over the next 7 months. So whatever planet or whatever sign rules your ninth house is an indicator of how you can get in touch with a sense of connecting with something that's greater than yourself, so that you can have a purpose or a mission. And theoretically, you can bring it into the 10th house and do something with it. So when I teach astrology, by the way, I do have an astrological course you can purchase through my website. One of the things that I work with is astrologically in terms of these transits, or the movement through the houses. Once you go through the 8th house, something profound happens. Like part of you dies. That's how the 8th house works. So let's say we're having a Saturn transit through the 8th house. Part of that Saturn transit is for you as an individual to drop your baggage, to get lighter, figure out what's really important, and then focus on that so you can get through that transit. And you get something out of the end of that. You get something numinous, something powerful, something has been understood, or in some cases even reclaimed. If you go through a Saturn transit of the 8th house, I'm not a huge fan of this idea of soul retrieval, but I feel like if there's going to be any potential for that in an astrological chart, it's a Saturn 8th house transit. You can go through parts of your life that you may need to resurrect or reconnect, and that can happen through the 8th house. But ideally, what you would want is to have an epiphany, right? Something comes to you. It's like, okay, I've got this thing. And then you get up to the 9th house and you take it up to the 9th house and you figure out what to do with it. Okay, well, what do I do with this thing now? What do I do with this thing that I just saw and learned or was revealed to me? So that's the upper room. Now you have this dialogue with your higher self. Like, what do I do with this now? How do I apply whatever I went through with that 8th house transit in a way that is meaningful and gives me an operating system for my life? Because the 9th house does deal with belief systems, and you get to try on and work on something new. That's theoretically how the ninth house works. And once you understand that, once you understand the catechism of the higher mind, then you get to move into the 10th house and say, I'm good. I understand ethics. I understand philosophy. I understand my beliefs. I know who I am. I know the ramifications of the things that I do to myself or to others. And now I can move into the 10th house and I can essentially be in the world and not be necessarily of it. Theoretically, that's how it's supposed to work. Okay. But the 9th house, aside from the 8th house transit, is really that house where we need to connect with something bigger than our day-to-day life. We need a vision, especially now. We need a vision. So let's just start with what's on the cusp of your 9th house. Now, some people use equal houses. I don't. If you use an equal house, you're going to know what's on the cusp of your 9th house. And even if your 9th house starts off in one sign and it ends in another. It doesn't matter. It's like the cusp determines the quality of that house. Now, there are other factors inside of that house that can be very applicable and important, but we're really looking at the cusp. Like what is the signature of that house? So what I wanted to do is I just wanted to go through quickly all 12 signs as it relates to the ninth house and this approach to what I would call the higher mind, or to be able to get a greater sense of vision and a greater sense of connectivity with what you're supposed to be doing in the world. Not from a material standpoint, although that may be part of it. Not from a relationship standpoint, although that may be part of it. But more of a sense of a big picture. Who am I? What am I here? Why am I here? What am I doing? What's going to get me through this? And especially now. I'm always a big proponent of meditation and prayer. If you're somebody who's prayerful and meditation, I've always said that meditation is whatever takes you out of your mind. For some people, it's riding a bike for 15 miles. For some people, it's jogging. For some people, it's gardening. For some people, it's actually meditating. For some people, it's doing qigong or something like that. So whatever allows you to drop your day-to-day mind so you can begin to occupy this kind of more inspirational place and space is a good, that's what you want to do. If you're a person that is a prayerful person, I mean, theoretically, every day should have some element of prayer to it, right? Theoretically, but that's another part of the ninth house. You kind of want to set the table for it. So let's just go through the various signs here. So let's say you have Aries on your ninth house cusp. Okay. That's a really kind of direct emanation. Like if you're going to have a vision, or you're going to connect with quote unquote your higher mind, or the mind of God, like Aries would be like almost instant emanation. Like, yep, got it. Let's go. Don't waste any time. Like, do not waste any time. If you have Aries there, you probably have Chiron going through your ninth house right now. If you have Aries on the cusp, it's a little tricky. It's a little bit of a tricky transit because there could be a lot of doubt with, well, who am I? What am I doing here? Does even being an individual and being alive right now even really matter? You could feel left out by God, right? You could feel like, what, hey, if there's really a God, come on now, let's see some action here. It's very Aries-like. But it's also very important because you could heal your relationship with this idea of the higher mind and figure out how you can become less vulnerable to how other people view your own belief systems. Own it, right? With Chiron there in Aries, you would just own it. Say, okay, I'm ready to own this, no matter like how crazy or how weird or how much it sets you apart from other people, especially with Chiron and Aries. Own it. And I'm having a deja vu here. And begin to act on it. Check your sources, but you can begin to act on it. And what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to heal your relationship with this idea that you're cut off from something that is really part of who you are. It's not outside yourself. That's the most important thing. And there's shifts. If once Chiron kind of moves, past the midpoint inside of that house, you begin to have a greater sense of being able to use Chiron as part of your operating system. It's like, okay, it's halfway through this transit. I'm starting to get a little bit here. So with Aries on the ninth house cusp, and because where we're at astrologically, that's where Chiron is. And you may have some Chiron in your eighth house and going to the ninth. It's a different discussion. But the idea is to be able to heal your relationship. And for some people, even with a Chiron transit, through Aries in the ninth house, that could be pretty tricky. You could get into stuff like sexual abuse with priests and religion, and not good. That would take a lot of work to get through that so that you can begin to trust again. And it's like, okay, that happened. And now I'm willing to move on and try to experience, to the best of my ability, a different kind of relationship with this idea of God, or this connection to something of a higher order, so that I can make it more personal. It's a tricky transit. All right, let's go on to Taurus. So with Taurus there on the cusp of your ninth house, again, probably pretty good chance you got Uranus going. I like Uranus transits of the ninth house. They're wacky. It's like, okay, I'm going to have some really interesting and unusual resets with, my consciousness and how I deal with things like religion and belief and faith. I have Uranus natally in my ninth house, so I'm kind of a heretic, and it's an unusual thing to live with in a lot of ways, especially in Leo, because I've said this before, a lot of Christian people think I'm the fucking devil. And a lot of more new agey people, or what I'd call, sort of softer spiritual people, think I'm like, a raging Nazi at times. It's weird, right? It's just a weird kind of thing, but I'm okay with it. Ultimately you learn how to live with this stuff, and nobody's going to tell you what to believe with Uranus in your ninth house. You're going to have to figure that out for yourself. So if you're a Taurus, your belief system probably pretty fixed, maybe pretty natural in a lot of ways. Maybe you've got some connections with shamanism and the earth, and being out in nature could connect you, right, with a sense of something bigger, connect you up with an expression of God through nature. Well, Uranus there is going to change that up. And Uranus transits through the ninth house are quixotic. So, especially because it's in a fixed sign. And I would say, get ready, try new things. Discard some of the things that you believe in, and especially in Taurus, whether it's money and the lack of money, or money and too much money, right? Because you're really going to rewire your belief systems around money and the things that make you secure with that transit of Uranus through Taurus in the ninth house. So have fun with it. I mean, I like Uranus transits in the ninth house. It mixes things up, and you might go through a period where you might reject a lot of your material values with Uranus transit of the ninth house, and it's okay. Whatever they are, your material value might have been, hey, I just want to be, live simple and be poor for for my life. And all of a sudden you get a Uranus transit going through there. It's like, wow, what's all this cryptocurrency about? And how else can I do shit like this, right? So again, it's not always going to be rooted in the material, but it has to do with your belief systems, and ultimately freeing yourself up and having a more radical and free approach to how you connect with that. And again, we're talking about the next 6 months. So if you've got Uranus transiting through your ninth house for the next 6 months, you want to look at things like resources. You want to look at things like gardens and food and all that stuff. Is that important to you? Maybe you're just going to say, hey, that's not really that important to me. I'm going to be free. I'm not going to be tied down by the burden of making sure I have to rotate my stock out. I'm just going to be here, and I'm just going to listen to the wind. And that's what's going to take me to wherever I need to be. I mean, that's a really, potentially interesting transit of Uranus through the ninth house. So if you've got that, have fun. All right, let's say you have Gemini up there on the ninth house cusp. Well, first of all, you've had the true node going through your ninth house, which would be good. I mean, theoretically, you would be kind of exploring and looking at the big picture and putting things together, putting pieces of the puzzle together. And that hopefully with the transit of the true node through the ninth house, the puzzle pieces are there and you can see it You can see whatever's gone on for the last 2 years in your life. It's like, okay, I get it now. I get it. Sometimes travel can be connected with the true node in Gemini going through the ninth house, but it's a different, it's not like traveling to another country. And in fact, because of how travel has been very restricted, might be much more difficult. But you would also connect through people that are from other countries with the true node in Gemini going through there. And that might be very interesting. And those connections could open you up. You know, people from other cultures and other religions, other races, that true node going through the ninth house could connect you into some of those beliefs and philosophies and faiths. And it could be very interesting. And through those people, right, you could, again, piece together this puzzle as to how you're going to get through the next 6 months. Take the true node out of there because it's going to be moving into your eighth house. Lucky you. You're still going to have Gemini up there. So the idea for me would be to communicate and to write, right? Gemini is all about writing and, you know, communicating and taking notes and journaling and figuring out how you can literally, in some ways, play the role of Hermes. Now, that is Hermes up in the ninth house. That is the place that Hermes descends down from heaven into the world. And that's kind of your role if you have Gemini there. You're there to interpret and be able to articulate a big idea. The challenge with that is that sometimes it can be too big and sometimes Gemini can be really narrow, but that's your goal. And you want to be able to articulate in language a big idea. In order to do that, you got to be able to understand what that big idea is. Sometimes you can learn some things, a number of different things with the ninth house cusp in Gemini, and putting together a lot of different kinds of ideas. Not one set, okay, well, I'm this and I'm that. I mean, a lot of times people who do have Gemini in the ninth house can wander through a number of different religions. And by the end of their life, they've braided it all together, which is a very Gemini kind of thing, right? So I guess your goal here for the next 6 months, really, your vision is, what's happened to you over the last year and a half. And maybe part of what that is communicating that to other people. Okay, let's get into Cancer on the ninth house. I find Cancer on the ninth house cusp. It's interesting because if you have Cancer on the ninth house cusp, there's probably a pretty good chance that you've either moved from another country or you're thinking about moving to another country, because that's usually how Cancer works. Where you might even marry somebody from another country, bring them into your home with Cancer there. But again, if we're looking at this idea of trying to understand how the ninth house inspires us, or the vision that we could get there so we can move through this time, it feels to me like I think that cusp has probably got one of the harder homework assignments in some ways because of the sensitivity with Cancer. And it's almost like too much, this is too much. I'm not sure I can handle this. Well, you can't handle it. And I feel like the idea here with Cancer on that cusp is really to find things that have a higher meaning for you, that you're going to be able to apply specifically to you in terms of your self-care, right? There's this, I feel like the idea here is that if you can take care of yourself and take care of your emotional needs and it's almost like at that point, you've kind of reached the top of Maslow's pyramid, and that you can receive something. Cancer is very receptive. And if you could just take care of your needs, whatever they are, right? Like Cancer is a sign that does pretty well with routine. So I think a good routine, over the next 6 months would be just good for you. Whatever that routine is, get up, feed the plant, feed the animals, or dogs, cats, water, or get into that Cancerian kind of thing. Because Cancer, does like that sort of repetitive nature. Cancer likes familiarity. So if you can set things up in a way that are familiar, but also reach a little bit, bring something into your everyday rituals where you take care of yourself. We have to reaching, stretching, growing, things like, yoga or Tai Chi or anything that's going to allow you to get a sense that you're moving towards a greater possibility of balance, emotional balance can be quite good. Because in the ninth house, you need to have that emotional traction in order to get something in a way that it's not like an idea. It's more like this soma, like you're feeling it, right? Like you're just feeling it through your body. Every single fiber and cell in your body is resonating with something that you can't explain. Like that's how Cancer works up there. And if you can do something on a daily basis so you can get into that and bring that and nurture that and grow that into your life, you'll get that. You will get that. And it'll be the greatest thing you can do. Like if you're a Cancer, I just do it anyway now. But if you got Cancer in the ninth house cusp, that's what you want to do. Leo, I know a lot about Leo on the ninth house cusp. That's where my Leo, that's where it is for me. And you're kind of seeing it, right? I mean, this is how I get my Leo, my ninth house on. I've got Uranus there. I'm talking on the internet. So for people that have Leo up there, one of the things that I think is good, it could be good for you, is number one, I think you have to be willing to step out a little bit and figuring out how you're going to, be brave and be bold and be courageous and open your heart. And if you can do that with that ninth house, and it's been hard, I think, for a lot of people who have the South Node going through there. I'm sorry, we'll get to that with Sagittarius. But for those people, for myself, I've had the South Node in my first house. And it's been okay. Because I've been getting a lot of really meaningful interaction with the true node of my seventh house. It's a different story, but a good one. It's about heart. It's about heart. It's about passion. It's about courage. And it's about standing up for your beliefs. I mean, that's really what Leo is there, right? That's Leo. That's Leo in that house. And it's like, if you want to get through this time, you're going to be on the front lines if you have Leo there, which means you're going to have a Sag rising. And that's just kind of how it is, right? So be bold, be brave, be courageous, be creative. Be creative. This is because that's, you're dealing with Leo issues really high on the chart, and you can be kind of out there in some ways for people and say, look, if I can do it, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. And that's true. That's true. So you want to cultivate that. And there's nothing wrong with a little bravado and a little bit of, passion and style, which is, very, very Leo-like. And for some people, it might be like, well, I'm going to wear my beliefs on my sleeve. And that may not necessarily be a bad thing until somebody tells you, shut up already. I've heard enough of your shit, which can happen. So, if you've got Leo there on your ninth house cusp, your goal really is to just be brave and bold and courageous and, be the truth, speak the truth, and understand that there is the potential for you to connect in a way that is going to represent your higher mind. I think in the ninth house with Leo there, it's the higher heart. And if you can connect in with that, the higher mind will follow. It's the higher heart of the mind. We got Virgo up in the ninth house cusp. it's an interesting place for Virgo, although not necessarily, the big, bold kind of proclamation that Leo brings to it, and certainly not as expansive and adventurous as the ruler of the house is Sagittarius. So how are you going to apply that just in your life in general? And what about the next 7 months? Virgo is about like the worst case scenario, right? You want to be prepared. You want to be prepared. You want to make sure you get all your things done with Virgo on your ninth house cusp. And once you get them done, then you can say, okay, well, what do I do next, right? To me, I mean, Virgo there is very much service oriented. So you're looking for something to do with a higher order. How can I serve? How can I help? How can I take whatever it is that I've learned and be of assistance to people? That's really what you're looking to do with Virgo there. And there could be some interesting things with also teaching people how to take care of themselves, or teaching people, survival skills, or teaching people health oriented practices. That's very important with Virgo in the ninth house, because the ninth house is also a house that's related to teaching. So that's a very, I think, underestimated value and potential with Virgo there. All right, let's move on. Let's go to Libra. If you have Libra on your ninth house cusp, part of what you're looking for is you're looking for a partnership that expands your horizons. You're looking to be inspired creatively and artistically and aesthetically, and you might meet people from other countries and other cultures and other religions that will play a role in your life, and especially on a one-to-one level. What I think you want to do is you want to have, Libra's all about relationship. So you want to have a relationship with the ninth house. I mean, that's really what you want to do. You want to have a relationship with it. So I feel like if you've got Libra there, the idea is that you really want to study it and be a part of it and have this reciprocal kind of connection and learning about it and basically partnering with your ninth house, in general, but especially for the next 6 months. So for some of you right now, the sun is going through there. Mercury is retrograde. This is actually a pretty good time if you've got the sun going through your ninth house. Not a bad time. So that would mean you're probably in Aquarius rising, by the way, which means that you'd have Saturn and Jupiter. So interesting time. Yeah, I mean, it's funny too, because if you're in Aquarius rising, you're with Libra up there in the ninth house, you're kind of looking for somebody that in a lot of ways helps you complete your belief system. And with Aquarius rising, that's going to be unusual. So I think for the next 6 months, I think it'd be really, really good for you to develop a relationship with your higher self. Explore that, figure that out. Try to court your higher self in a lot of ways. And usually with Libra, it's about inquiry and creativity. And those are interesting things, and balance, and finding balance ultimately, for a while at least. Scorpio on the ninth house cusp. That's very deep. It's very intense, and related to this idea of truth. And if you have Scorpio up there, you're going to have the South Node going through your ninth house at some point, starting in January, over the course of the next 19 months. That could be intense for people that have Scorpio up there. That means you're probably a Pisces rising, by the way. And that could be challenging, especially if you're dealing with Neptune transits to the ascendant or the first house. And a couple of years out from now, you'll be dealing with Saturn. But let's just stay with Scorpio there. The idea with Scorpio in general in the ninth house is that I think this idea of beliefs, this is where we get into some of that Aries energy, that Mars energy, with Scorpio up there, and having to go through sort of the burnt offerings of religion with Scorpio there. You have to go through those things. You have to just, like the ashes of belief, so that you can rise up like the phoenix and have something new emerge out of that. That's really a big part of Scorpio up in the ninth house. And travel would be very profound with Scorpio there. And I have Pluto natally in my ninth house. So when I have traveled abroad, very intense, good. I like it, but intense. So you get some of that with Scorpio. So this is going to be, I think, a challenge for Pisces rising people with that South Node going through there, and to not lose your faith, really. And it's a hard one. I think it's a hard one. Again, without the transit of the South Node, you want to go through, you want to burn down the false beliefs. I think for you people who do have Scorpio up there, you're going to look to your second house and the true node through Taurus in the second house. That's going to be something that's going to be important. So stay grounded. You've already got your Uranus going through your, so let's see, the third house. I'm sorry, true node through the third house. So definitely stay grounded. Boy, really stay grounded. Spend more time like in your village or your town. Get involved with the community garden. Plant a community garden. Look to find ways to connect with people in your immediate environment. Also, it could be a very good time for you to reconnect with siblings with that true node going through the third house. And singing. Singing is really underrated. I have a terrible singing voice. But if you have Taurus on your third house cusp, you should take advantage of that. And especially with the true node going through there and with Uranus going through there, finding your voice, very important. Chanting, singing, being in a choir, whatever, right? And writing could be very helpful too. Okay, let's go to Sagittarius. You have Sagittarius on the ninth house cusp. You're going to be in Aries. And all you got to do is just be a true believer, right? But that's hard because you've had the South Node going through your ninth house for the last 19 months. So it's hard being a true believer. But guess what? What's left over of that transit will be important, and that's what you'll have. So the idea here with Sagittarius there is to believe and have faith and to cultivate a spirit. You know, Aries rising can be very self-directed, but if you can connect with that higher mind with Sagittarius there, and you can run that energy through your ascendant, boy, you can just cover lots of ground. Just cover lots of ground. It's like believe, that's a really important part, is to believe in what you know to be true. Now, in this case, you'd have Chiron transiting your first house, so you're dealing with potentially some doubt in yourself. With Chiron there, you're going to work through that. That's going to be these Chiron transits of Aries in the ninth and Aries in the first. Belief, higher mind, religion, the individual kind of in an existential quest to understand the higher meaning and nature and order of life. And then in the first house, the individual feeling wounded and potentially vulnerable and weak. That's where you need the ninth house even more. You need the ninth house even more. So if you've got Sagittarius up there, work on your faith, whatever it takes. Let's go Capricorn. If you have Capricorn on the ninth house cusp, well, you probably you've had Pluto going through there, so you damn well are certain that your belief systems have changed and your relationship with religion has changed. Your relationship with your father has changed. Lots of big change with Pluto going through the ninth house for people. So obviously you're going to be a Taurus rising. The idea with Capricorn there ultimately is to become, it's a really interesting position because Sagittarius wants to expand and Capricorn wants to be the authority. So you have to figure out your relationship with the authority of the universe with the ninth house, so you can work with it. If you can figure that out and work with it, I think a lot of it has to do with responsibility. That's, to me, it just boils down to responsibility. And sometimes you may have to take responsibility for other people there. and you may have to play the role of somebody who is supposed to be wise, or who is supposed to be like the hierophant of your family or the hierophant of your community. I have an uncle in New Jersey who's a Capricorn. I don't know what his chart is like, but he, in his mind, he's played that role. He kind of has played that role to some extent. But you have to do that, and it's through that experience and through that taking the reins of responsibility of being the grown up with Capricorn in the ninth house. So you get wisdom, and it's not always flashy or like, oh man, I just got a message from God, right? But it is important. And by acting as if you are moral authority, or you do possess a moral authority, I think you get more moral authority. Don't be afraid. We'll bring Aquarius up there in the ninth house cusp, which is wacky. And you've got Saturn going through there, and you've had Jupiter going through there. And that's going to make you a Gemini rising, obviously. So, Aquarius in the ninth house is crazy beliefs out there. It's fine. It's like you're supposed to have unusual beliefs. You're supposed to have kind of a radical relationship with this idea of God, and you're not supposed to experience it alone. That's the nature of Aquarius there. So you're looking for other people to reflect, especially if you're Gemini rising, to reflect the many facets of your consciousness. So over the course of the next 6 months with Saturn going through that house, that's a really important transit. You should be taking notes and figuring out, because Gemini rising tends to be a bit of a dilettante. No, this is no slight to Gemini rising people. I love Gemini rising. It's great. It's inquisitive, charming, youthful. But Saturn up there is saying, you got to get serious now. You have to start figuring out how you're going to make a difference in some ways, how you're going to organize, how you're going to be a part of something bigger than kind of your daily operation. And the Saturn transit to your ascendant will ultimately be very good. Trining your ascendant through the ninth house will ultimately be very, very good. It may cause you to work a bit more. It may cause you to be more engaged in organizing very diverse groups of people, but it'll be worth it. It's where you can begin to form bonds, and the bonds will be the connection between you and your higher mind. It's like your higher mind will be an amalgam of a number of different people, and they'll all be facets of that. You'll see yourself in all these other people, and they'll all have something interesting to share with you and to reflect back to you. And you get to do something with it too. It'd be a bit challenging if you have to travel or delay travel plans with Saturn through the ninth house, but it's okay. All right, let's wrap it up. We'll bring Pisces in there. Obviously, Neptune's transiting through the ninth house. That means you're going to be a Cancer rising. I've had so many people in my lifetime as an astrologer with Cancer rising, either Cancer rising or Gemini rising. Let's say the bulk of my clients be those two rising signs. So Pisces on the midheaven poses a very interesting dilemma for the individual, because they have to have faith. It's important. They have to have it. It's like it's key. And that's how Pisces on the midheaven operates. So it's not always easy, especially now with Neptune transiting through there. But man, like if you're really going to understand the nature of the universe and the potential of having a mystical connection and oneness with God, I mean, this is going to be your time. And to allow that to cultivate and really move with a deeper sense of connection. Because Cancer rising provides an interesting dilemma. It's a cardinal sign, but it doesn't move forward like Aries does. It moves backwards, sideways. When Cancer rising people feel good, they're really great, and they can really initiate, and they can move into the world, and they can be very powerful agents of connecting and healing and bonding and kind of soulful day-to-day interaction. When they're off, it's a different story. But it's a very different kind of approach than Pisces. Pisces wants to dissolve and become part of everything. And Cancer wants to make sure that it understands its relationship with the immediate environment. So with Neptune up there and you have Pisces on the ninth house in general, Cusp in general, your thing is to allow yourself to move upward and to have aspirational thoughts and have aspirational feelings. And to, John Levi had a really great quote today, and I think it applies to this. And it's about this idea of when you're in hell, you have to keep moving forward. And for me, that's what it's like. Like, even if you hit like a discordant note with the Neptune transit or with Pisces in the 12th house, you have to keep going. When you think you're weary or you think you've had too much, you have to keep going. Because there is a quality that will reward itself to you as a result of that. You would be rewarded as a result of that. And the other thing too is to be creative. That's another big thing, right? But let's just say you have Neptune, like, to be creative and to be inspired and to find, artistic things that move you, whether they're paintings or maybe you yourself want to paint and do something that's going to be connecting you up with a sense of the universe that isn't necessarily verbal or isn't linear, right? I mean, that's how you get to it. I did a thing one time where I was trying to understand why so many Cancer or Gemini rising people would come to me. So I went in and I looked at Pisces on the midheaven and people that have Neptune on the midheaven. And the majority of the people that I found were highly creative. I'm talking about celebrities, people I think Leonard Bernstein has either Pisces on the midheaven or Neptune up there. Composers, playwrights, painters, musicians. So that's another aspect here. So if you have Neptune on the ninth house, doing something that's not always mental could be really helpful. It can free you up so that you can look at your art, you can look at your creation and say, man, this is inspirational. I need to do more of this. I'm connecting with something. I think with Pisces on the ninth house, it has the most potential for connecting with archetypes and being able to tap into them. That can be very inspiring. And even if you have to paint or draw or create something that's dark, like, fucking do it. Like, just do it and get it out so you can look at it. And maybe you're channeling the depth and pain of, I don't know, thousands of souls or millions of souls. That could be important. Maybe difficult for you, but it can be important because when you get on the other side of that, guess what? There's something else. There's something cleansing and something purifying there. And ultimately with Pisces, the Virgo in me says you want to purify, you want to distill, you want to get to that really pure crystalline water. One time I was in the Calaveras Canyon. Was it the canyons? In New Mexico, the big ones. I want to say Calaveras. I guess it is Calaveras, right? Anyway, the big ones. You go down there. First of all, going in those canyons, it's a trip. Big giant opening in the mountain, bats flying out. It's like, fuck, this is interesting. And then you start to descend. It gets darker and darker, and it gets hotter. That's the interesting point. It's by the time you get down to the bottom, it's hot. It's kind of muggy, but there are those pools of water down there. Like, they've just been sitting there for a long time. You can't touch them. It's like, you cannot touch that water. To me, that's the Piscean water, that pure ancient water that you want to distill. So that's the elixir, right? That is the spiritual elixir. Okay, there's your tour of the ninth house and some ideas here for you so that you can get through the next 6 months. Okay, I got other charts, but I'm gonna call it a night. I want to leave on that note. Yeah, I'm gonna call it a night. Maybe I'll save them for next week. But you know what? Something comes up next week, but at least I have content in the bag, right? So I don't have to look for it. I got 3 charts. I got content in the bag for next week. All right, let me check in with you guys before I say good night and wish you all well for the Monday ahead of you. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. See you tomorrow. Yep. Come on over to 15 Minutes of Flame. We'll get down. Hey, Angela. Water signs, all love and purified. Yeah, Carlsbad. Thank you. I don't know why I had Calaveras in my head. Because Calaveras County. Okay. I think we're good, man. I think we're good. Good to see you guys. Thanks for being here. 192 people. All right. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. And come on over to 15 Minutes of Flame tomorrow. And look, Friday is the final day. Friday's the final day to make reservations for the big event here in the Hill Country. Again, we're going to have Jay Widener, Sharon Rose, myself, Miss Emily Moyer, who is in chat tonight, is going to be doing a conspiracy cocktail from the Inn of the Hills. And Masaki Miyagawa will be in Los Angeles beaming his music in. So we're going to have a live set from Masaki. We got a great outdoor activity planned for Sunday. And we're going to have some really cool stuff that I'm not going to tell you about. It's always good to have a surprise. Always good to have a surprise. Okay. Use your head in order to discern what's really hard as possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. And for Jasper, we say good night. Take good care. And bye for now.